have a very interesting presentation now, and this is going to be by another mind of IIT Madras, CESA. This will be on computer vision to potential applications, exciting developments in the sports ecosystem. Now, this session, as the name suggests, would involve insights into computer vision in sports and even opportunities, as Dr. Mahesh was also pointing out, for sports tech startups in this space. For this, I'd like to now invite Professor Dr. A.N. Rajagopalan from Department of Electrical Engineering from IIT Madras itself. He's a leading authority in the world in deep learning, machine learning, image restoration for deblurring, super resolution in painting, and others. Please, sir, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Let me move forward. So this kind of a word, computer vision, right? It's been floating around since yesterday. There have been so many of you, right, who has actually spelled this word out. So I just wanted to briefly tell you what is, right, from the words of an academician, right? The way kind of we look at it is vision, really, a computer vision is really an interplay among geometry, illumination, and actually and motion. So geometry is like your depth of the scene, which I think so many of you talked about yesterday. Illumination, probably not so much, but really the light sources that are around you. And then motion could be the cameras moving. Probably somebody in the scene is moving. It could be a dynamic scene, camera moving, whatever, right? So these three words sort of, in a sense, right, encompass the idea of what you mean by actually computer vision. And why is it so, right? Why is it that, right, there is so much interest in this area? It's simply because of the fact that you're able to combine what is called physics-inspired, kind of deep learning, which means that you're able to bring in traditional vision knowledge into a deep learning network these days, which is also what you saw yesterday. A lot of it, probably, right, it was not explicitly spelled out, but a lot of it that I could see yesterday was all about a combination of what you've known, from the past, in terms of geometry and computer vision, and how we are able to imbibe it into a deep learning framework, right? Whatever you call it, ML, deep learning, whatever, right? And what can it do? So that prior to kind of delving into what it can do for sports per se, right? I just wanted to talk about just wanted to show you a few slides about what, for example, at IIT Madras we have already done, right, in this area, and some of these you can even relate to sports. Not that they're unrelated, but there is some, sometimes it's explicit, sometimes there is an implicit relationship. So here is a video that you're playing out wherein you're able to deblur a scene, right? This is, of course, in this case, there is a camera motion, right, because of which you're seeing the optical blur, but then because of which you're seeing the motion blur. It could also happen, there is just an object moving, the camera is stationary, you still want to probably capture a sharp picture and so on. This happens all the time, right? And then the second one that I wanted to show was what is called image super resolution. So here is an idea that you have a camera and then the camera has a low resolution quality, right? Which also is interesting because most of the time you don't want to spend money on a very high-end sort of a camera. So you have a low resolution camera and then you want to be able to get the same details, or almost, you want to sort of enhance what you can see from a low resolution sort of a picture. Right? That again, you can do. So for example, in this case, I hope you're able to see that the one on the right is looks actually sharper, and this is supposed to be better than just trying to do some kind of a simple red interpolation. One of the key things that one has to remember when one does super resolution is that you have to keep the field of view the same. For example, that I can get finer information by just moving a camera closer to a subject, right? That is not super resolution. So a technical sort of a definition of super resolution is that whatever you see on the left, I should be able to see the same on the right, but then at a higher resolution. You can extend this notion to what is called a temporal super resolution. This is called spatial because, all that you're doing is, trying to sort of, get out of one box, you're trying to get 4 of them or 8 of them. So that's like 8x super resolution or 4x super resolution. The other thing that you can talk about is keep the spatial resolution intact, but then you talk about what's called a temporal super resolution, right? So like, for example, there were some talks yesterday where, somebody was talking about, 60 FPS, 120 FPS going higher and higher. And again, right, as you go higher and higher, you have to kind of invest more, in such cameras. Instead of that, you could ask, are there actually algorithmic ways by which, you can probably, go up to a higher sort of a temporal sort of a resolution. Again, it may not be, it's like a trade-off between doing an optical zoom versus doing a soft zoom. Right? So soft zoom will never beat optical zoom, but then you still get so much more out of a soft zoom. So in the same sort of tone, right, you can actually look upon temporal super resolution that you can do with actually deep learning, computer vision coming together. So that's like a soft kind of a temporal super resolution, right, that you can also talk about. And then here is something, right, that is again interesting. This is like, weather kind of, weather sort of applications where you want to probably look at, removing fog, from an image. You want to remove probably rain from an image or haze from an image as you're traveling by car, right? You can kind of think of applications when, in basically autonomous cars, right, where you're driving and then you're not able to see too far because of heavy rain or something, and then you have a kind of display inside the car where probably there is an algorithm running in the background which can tell you who's ahead of you and sort of, right, stuff like that. So in our lab we have very recent works, right, in these areas. So I'm just trying to give you a snapshot of what else it can do. I mean, I've heard a lot. I mean, yesterday, I was there the whole day. I could hear a lot of this one, the focus on sports. But at the same time, I thought probably, right, many of you may not be aware of several other things that computer vision can do. And then this is another thing which is called in-painting. This could actually have very interesting applications in sports. For example, right, you could have a board, a display board, a banner or something where you're supposed to be showing somebody's ad, but then there's an occlusion. A player comes in front of it most of the time, and then how do you sort of kind of remove the occlusion, right, in a sort of a soft sense, right? Because you cannot ask him to move. But at the same time, you can kind of think of what is called in-painting. So there is also a recent area which is called out-painting, which is like going outside of the image and then sort of trying to see what probably could exist outside of it. Here it's like right, in-painting. That means inside the image. And some of you might think, right, is this even kind of doable, right? Like for example, the amount of information that is missing out there is pretty large, right? And in spite of that, these days, right, we have networks that can be trained very well. And again, I don't kind of believe in simply kind of throwing a data set into a network and simply hoping that, you'll get the required output, right? It doesn't happen that way. Most of these are works, right, that have actually appeared in top venues because of the fact that we kind of bring in science into it. It's not just a network. It is not simply a lot of data that you simply pump into a network and then hope that, right, it's going to do all of this. It will not. There's a lot of insight, right, that kind of needs to go into the network, wherein you bring in right, your own background in this area, and then you try to see how to fuse all of the physics that you know, right, that you already know. I mean, how do you kind of bring all of that, right? I mean, right into this. Then of course, then there's something called underwater imaging, right? Which we have done. And here, for example, right, this is actually an underwater video, which is actually shared with the entire world. This happened last year in Paris. So our lab, we have a tie-up with NIO Goa. And when we had my students going there, and then we had their divers going under the sea, almost in shallow waters, of course. And then you have these very interesting objects that are submerged there, and then you want to be able to not just improve the image quality, right? You want to be also able to kind of get a depth map. So in the sense, you want to be able to build a 3D structure of this object. Just one question. I had kind of 20 minutes, right? Is that correct, or was it 10 or something? 20, right? Okay. Because is this decrementing or is this incrementing? Decrementing. Okay. Okay, and then right, I mean, here is a situation where you have a diver who's actually going around an object, and then you can actually map the camera path, right? And then here is an example which is a published work last year, where we actually showed that you can do depth reconstruction, which is what you see on the right hand on the rightmost side, and then in the middle, right, is actually a restored image, right, which gives you an idea about basically what this technology can do. And then you can also think about generating dynamic novel views, which is again a very interesting aspect, which would have very interesting applications in sports. This is a very recent thing. It's called a neural radiance field. Now this again, I mean, this field advances so fast that neural radiance field is already being overtaken by something called a Gaussian splatting. I'm sure there are at least a few in the audience who must have heard about it. And here the idea is that you have a dynamic scene, and then you have a set of cameras that is watching the scene, and you want to be able to generate novel views. So for example, think of a sports where you have multiple cameras which is actually watching watching a dynamic scene, and then you want to kind of synthesize, or you want to really take a novel view from a virtual sort of a position, and you want to be able to not just see the scene, but you want to see a dynamics of the ball trajectory, and this is very early works, and I know this is a very emerging field, and it's not an easy thing to do, but then it's really it's a very interesting topic, and as I said, next thing. So, for example, the way I see it is vision. For example, if you try to apply it for sports, to me, it appears that there are kind of three heads, right, under which you can sort of, roughly classify. So whatever talks we heard, right, between, whatever, right, in day one, you would sort of see that, there is one which is completely object-centric. In this case, I'm talking about a ball, but then it would also be a shuttlecock. It could be a racket, right? It could be whatever, right? But the thing is that you could have under object-centric thing, right, you could have a detection, you could have a detection of the ball. Okay, it's just going, how do you go back? Yeah. Okay, let me just go back. I think it just went forward. So that what you could have is ball localization tracking in 2D as well as in 3D, and then you could have a trajectory. Some of this, of course, we saw yesterday, right? How do you kind of estimate a drift of a ball flight and so on. And then you could also ask something more. You could ask about the spin of a ball. Can you try to estimate the axis of spin and so on, right? And then, right, you could actually go forward and then, talk about, instead of being object-centric, you can talk about something which is being player-centric. And again, under player-centric thing, you can have two heads. One is like individual, another could be group. And under the individual thing, you can talk about player kind of a detection. You can talk about player, say, segmentation, which is like, hugging a contour, right, right along the body of the player. And then you can have player recognition and tracking, wherein you probably use a jersey or some number or something by which you're able to actually track a person through the field. Then again, right, there could be biomechanics, joint angles, 2D, 3D, and so on. Action classification, it could be swimming, it could be boxing, right? And then right, you could have various different actions that you try to classify, all at an individual level. Then you could have actually something at a group level, where probably, right, you want to understand what kind of tactical formations, right, do these people have. What is the kind of ranging, from, let's say, one player to another, right, within the field, game strategies, and then gaming. Of course, we had some, very, very interesting this is panel discussions, right, yesterday in the evening, where the Z gaming and then gaming engines and all, right, were being talked about. And then of course, other than this, there is also this other vertical, which is about fan engagement, right, which again, we heard, a few talks yesterday. Again, you could have under this, you can talk about on-demand 3D reconstruction, on-demand probably novel views, visual content insertion, animations. So there's so many of them, right, which can all come under the head of computer vision for sports. And then miscellaneous things, like, for example, you may want to do content indexing, event extraction, right, a DRS, a referee sort of decisions, training and coaching, right, advertisement boards, post-match analysis, individual group level, whatever, right, and then content blurring sometimes for its anonymity. So you can see that, this scope is very vast. And of course, some of these works we've already done, right, in our lab. So for example, extending YOLO in order to be able to, pick up the ball, in actually real videos, that you can actually scrape from the web. Okay, and then the other thing that I wanted to show you was how could you probably track a ball, right? All the way, right? So when the ball is very big, probably it's easy to track it. But then if you want to be able to track it all the way, right, when it's actually shrinking in size, going far away from the camera, can you still kind of maintain your track? And you can see that, some of the existing works, right, would not be able to scale up, right? They can probably do up to a certain point, but not really all the way. And then, right, you can also have, then we can also do a trajectory or the sun tracking. Again, right, we heard a few talks yesterday. Of course, this involves, building, doing the camera intrinsics, the camera extrinsics. This is, of course, using a two-view camera, and probably there's a lot of interest in doing this with a single camera now, right? So, yesterday again, right, we heard a few talks on that. And of course, here is some work that we did in our lab. So some of it indoors, some of it outdoors, and in indoors it's easy to validate. In outdoors probably it's not so very easy to validate, but then in indoors you can actually validate how well you're doing in terms of doing a trajectory estimation, ball trajectory 3D. And then here is another thing where, as I said, ball mechanics, right? So in this case you want to be able to probably estimate the RPM of the ball, right, as it actually spins along. You may even want to go further and ask, at what axis, right, is it actually spinning, which is a harder problem, much harder problem, but I'm sure there's a lot of interest even in that. Of course, course, I'm not saying that all this is solved, right? But I'm just saying that, right, these are all interesting angles to kind of look at. I mean, right, we have done some spade work in this, and I'm sure that there's a lot more can be done. And then there is this boxing thing, right, which was shared with us by NIS. And here we could do boxing action classification at an image level, and then we've also done something at a video level. And of course, and here, we get about let's say 70%, and 80% on training, and then a test is about 70. If you use the video clips, I mean, and we have a data set that is now completely available. There's about 16 videos, 80,000 frames, right? All of it hand annotated, curated, right? And right, this is a data set shared with us by NIS. And we have actually video clips also for every action, so you can do like jab, whatever, right? The uppercut, and whatever, right? 8-10 actions which are the most common in boxing, and you can actually do kind of action classification, right? And then after this, right, I think I'm almost there. And then you can also combine audio with video, right? And again, right, this could be very useful for example, doing a content search and so on, right? What I feel is that it's not entirely solved, or all is not hunky-dory, right? There's a lot of work, right, that remains to be done, and here are some of the things that we understand as really hurdles in the way, right, which you'll have to overcome. But some of them, right, may not really pose a serious bottleneck. Some of them might, right? And of course, here is a slide that kind of talks about what kind of challenges you can expect to face on domain, on field, and then within the domain, right, across data sets, and then a compute. And finally, right, I just wanted to say that there is a huge opportunity that I see for computer vision, right, for sports, and there are actually, right, I mean, you can easily see that there are big openings there, right, in terms of doing research. And then you can also, of course, use your cell phone as a kind of second display now, right, which can make it all very engaging. And then you can also do both online and offline analysis of vision data. And I guess, right, early bird will always win the race. I hope I've been on time. Okay, thanks.